Okay, so I am talking to you today from the Independent Child Trafficking Guardianship Service. So this service comes under the National Counter-Trafficking Centre, which is part of Barnardo's. So I'm a team manager for the North team. So within North, we cover Merseyside, Greater Manchester, Lancashire, West and North Yorkshire. So our work in North Yorkshire covers all the local authority areas: North Yorkshire, York, Redcar and Cleveland, Middlesbrough and Stockton-on-Tees. And it's broadly split, the work that we do, into 3 different types of work. So we offer ICTIG direct support. So ICTIG is Independent Child Trafficking Guardian. So the direct workers advocate in a guardianship capacity on behalf of the child that's being referred to us, in their best to ensure that their best interests are reflected in the decision-making process. So ICTIG work focuses on ensuring that the child's protected from further harm, preventing possible repeat victimisation, re-trafficking or going missing, and also promoting the child's recovery. So we are independent from statutory agencies, but we do work together with all professionals involved in working with a young person. The way that we would get involved is if an NRM referral is made and a child or young person is living in one of these areas here that I mentioned, they should also then be referred into our service. So as I said, we work alongside professionals, so we'll work with social workers, youth offending workers, immigration solicitors to advocate in the child's best interest. We can support with assessments and safety planning. We can support with submitting NRMs. So sometimes we do get referrals into us before an NRM's been submitted. And as mentioned in one of the presentations earlier, we are a first responder agency. And obviously in our line of work, we do have, we work with the SCA and submitting NRMs quite regularly. Whereas sometimes a social worker might not have done that before. So we can help to upskill that social worker, work alongside them to get that NRM submitted. Once an NRM is submitted, there is a statutory duty for any professional working with that person to keep the SCA updated in order that a decision can be made. So we will do that. We will support other professionals to do that as well. We work directly with young people to help them to understand what's happened to them, to understand that it's not their fault. We can educate around exploitation and trafficking. We can do sessions on safety work, and obviously always make it clear to the young person that it's not their responsibility to remove themselves from any exploitative situation, whilst educating about the situations that they might be in. Our hope is really that by recognising exploitation and the risk that they might be at, they might be able to speak with the trusted professionals sooner rather than later in order to reduce risk. We do a lot of work around building positive sense of identity, and we celebrate culture and tradition. We recognise that the children that we support have often experienced many traumatic experiences. The young people that we support directly don't have an adult in the UK with parental responsibility. So a large proportion of those young people are unaccompanied asylum seeking children. So they're going to be separated from family. They've potentially grown up in conflicted zones. They might have suffered bereavement, extreme poverty, family breakdown. Arriving here in the UK, not knowing what to expect. They could have had frightening journeys to the UK, and all of these things go alongside any experience they've had of trafficking and exploitation. So we work in a really trauma-informed way. We want to work with the other professionals so that we know that we're not duplicating work, which could re-traumatise. We spend a lot of time building relationships with young people, so that they know that they've got somebody else in their life, and we will do nice things as well, and we try to work in really creative ways, as you can see on some of the pictures, some of the examples of work that we've done with young people. And so the second type of work that we do is indirect support. So for young people who do have somebody in the UK with parental responsibility, it's recognised that they already have a large group of, or quite often already have a large group of professionals supporting them. So rather than adding somebody into that direct work, we take a more strategic role. So the role is a RPC, which is a regional practice coordinator. And they work collaboratively with key agencies. They offer consultations and support for professionals, and they're able to share approaches for professionals working directly with children and share best practice ideas. We can share a range of resources and publications. We're also NRM first responders, and we put on learning events as well, which I will share the link with you all later on towards the end of my presentation, on subjects like the NRM, the Modern Day Slavery Act, and they're all free as well. They're all online and free for people to join. Although a large proportion of the young people that we work with indirectly are British national children, there are still children who might not be British nationals but have parents in the country, so we can offer advice around immigration processes. We very much understand the model of contextual safeguarding, and we apply these approaches to all our work with professionals, with the child in the centre, and all the elements around them that might be impacting them being discussed, and understand that exploitation can come from within the home, but also can come from external sources. And again, just reminding professionals that it's never the responsibility of the child or young person to remove themselves from the exploitative situation, and that it's the professionals around them that need to support with that. So our third type of support that we offer is post-18 support. Now, this is not available in all of our areas, but for the North East it is available in Stockton. So we can support young people who are 18 plus and where there's a recognised need for support as they transition into adult services. So Louise mentioned about the definition of trafficking, but I just want to point out that there is a slight difference in the definition of trafficking of adults and trafficking of children. So whereas Louise mentioned that there are 3 stages, 3 requirements that have to be met for it to be defined as human trafficking. So there's the recruitment, transportation or transfer, there's the means, and there's the purpose of exploitation. For a child, so somebody that's under the age of 18, there are only 2 distinct stages. There's the act and the purpose. So the act is the recruitment or the transportation, the harbouring, the receipt of a person, and the purpose is for the purpose of exploitation. So when we're working with a young person under 18, as part of their NRM referral, there is no need to prove the means. There's no need to prove that they were coerced. There's no need to prove that they were threatened, that they were abducted. However, once a person turns 18, if there is further exploitation, that means does come into effect. So because the definition recognises that a child cannot give informed consent to their own exploitation, even if they agree to travel or understand what is going on, when a young person legally becomes an adult, this change in definition does add further complexities when trying to prove that exploitation and trafficking has taken place. As a service, and I'm sure in many other services as well, we all understand that just because a child turns 18 doesn't mean that exploitation is going to stop. And we also recognise that safeguarding a young person once they are 18 can be more challenging because of lots of different factors. The progression to adulthood can change how a young person's viewed by the police and other safeguarding partners. Young people may have outstanding criminal justice processes, such as upcoming court dates for offences which are linked to their exploitation. And this can further delay them moving on with their lives. For example, it can delay an asylum claim. We do see lots of good practice of high-risk young people once they turn 18, remaining on a stay and put agreement or being placed in a high support residential accommodation. But we also recognise that there's a national shortage of appropriate quality accommodation, and sometimes it's just not possible for these high-risk young people to remain in really safe and robust placements. We also recognise that leaving care workers have a smaller oversight than a social worker over young people, and if a young person that we're working with isn't entitled to leaving care support, then they're likely to be left without any professional oversight at all. So when a child is approaching 18, we can look at whether or not this young person is going to require ongoing support. If they do, it's reviewed really frequently. It's a much shorter term piece of work that we're going to be doing with very specific outcomes that would be agreed on an individual basis when work begins. And it's very similar to the ICTIG direct support that we do, but as I say, really smart outcomes. So what are we wanting to achieve? When can we achieve that by? And also preparing the young person for the transition, that they will have less support going forwards. So just a little bit about if you are supporting a child or young person, or you identify a child or young person moving forward, if there are indicators of potential trafficking and exploitation, please do refer them to our service. So we have a guardianship assessment team who triage all our referrals, and they can provide really fast support with safety guidance. They can speak with professionals on the phone or communicate via email, and they will look at whether or not then any referral needs to be moved out to region for any of the types of support that I've already gone through. So we have an online referral form, and I will stick the link for that in the chat once I've finished. We've got a 24/7 support line that professionals can call at any point for advice and guidance. And we also have a website, which I will pop the link for that in the chat also. So if you do have any questions, I know that there's a form in the chat for them to be added, and I'm hoping that I can get to some of those this afternoon at the end of the session. And any that I can't get to then, I'm more than happy to sort out a written response. If you want to contact our service directly with questions, our email address is there on the slide. And we also, again, I mentioned Eventbrite sessions. I will stick the link for that into the chat. So if anybody's interested in booking on any of those, you can have a look at that. And I'll also stick this link into the chat just if you've got any feedback specific to this presentation. Just before I finish up, I'll just pop this slide up that has just got a few useful links on there. The Independent Child Trafficking Guidance document from the Home Office, some information on contextual safeguarding, NRM guidance, and a guide to appropriate language that's been produced by the Children's Society. So that can quite often be something that specifically our indirect workers quite often in meetings might need to challenge language that's used, reframing things that are said, just to ensure that all the young people that we're working with are being viewed as victims and not being criminalised. So I believe that we are having a short break now for 10 minutes. Thank you for listening.
Gemma, thank you very